Hey guys, this is IX with Rollout Reviews, bringing you another S.H.Figuarts review. This time it is Kamen Rider Gaim Orange Arms. So, we'll set the figure itself off to the side here and take a quick look at the packaging. I love what they've done up front here with the orange slices. And the product images at the back look super sharp. But there is that. Here is the figure itself to start, and it seems they fired whoever was in charge of the Wizard Figuarts and actually hired a group of people who knew what they were doing. He looks fantastic, and I love the approach Figuarts has been taking over the past year or so, with things like Blade, Kabuto Renewal, this guy, and the upcoming Hibiki. They're all aimed towards more of a screen-accurate approach rather than the stylized nonsense that Figuarts has done in the past, and I absolutely much prefer this way of doing things. Starting with the head here, his compound visor is done very well, albeit a little bit different than past Figuarts. It's more of an orange slice design than straight up bug eyes. Now he's got his crest up top here, made out of a hard plastic, which is nice, but you want to be extra careful not to dull the ends or just straight up break it. The blue paint is nice and sparkly, and the finish on his orange parts is really well done as well. It's got some seam lines in the back here, but they're barely noticeable, and a little bit of green up top to top it off. Now, the armor itself is not removable, and even if you do manage to get it off, it does not transform into an orange. Most of these little hinges are just for show. The only ones that actually function are the ones on the side here, so that the arms can move in and out. Despite that, the attention to detail is great. I love the fact that they painted underneath the armor here, even though you rarely ever see it. And the fact that these are actually hollow. There is a support beam inside there, but the illusion is still great. Now, it seems that this is actually a separate piece, but it's probably glued on. It's probably only separate just so that it's convenient for the designers to make redecos and remolds using the same body. The driver itself is fantastically done. The things they can do with tampo decals is insane, especially the detail on the little faceplate on the driver itself. That looks amazing. Looks exactly like the DX driver. The details on the lock seat are very similar, the orange slices and the tiny Daimaru on the bottom section. It's got the blade that does go up and down, albeit it's a little bit fiddly. It pops off often, but that's better than it snapping off, so it's got that going for it. The lock seat itself is made out of a malleable plastic, so it will not break as often, or as easily, rather. It's got a little holster on the side there, and the holder for the, well, what is that called? Muso saber? Yeah, that's it. Little pinpoint details on his thighs and on his lower arms. Little bit of overspray on the shins, but nothing too bad. And of course the Gaim logos on the bottom of his feet. Now his feet aren't die-cast, they're just the normal plastic, but just because of all the plastic used in his chest, he's very hefty and feels really nice in hand. A very quality piece and extremely well done. Overall, his proportions are fantastic, and I don't have many problems with just the way this guy looks. For articulation, his head is on the standard Figuarts joint, so there's quite a bit of range. However, it is slightly limited by the armor back here. The armor on his shoulders goes up and down on a simple hinge, however, the shoulder itself is done a little bit differently. First of all, you have this rubbery plastic that gets out of the way pretty easily. The joint itself is very tight, goes up about that far. What I'm not too sure about is that tightness in relation to his bicep swivel. It just feels a little bit fiddly, and when I try bringing the arm down from here, it bends slightly. Oh well, if you know how the joints work, it won't be too much of a problem, but it's still a point of concern. The elbows bend to a degree that you'd expect, and the wrist has quite a bit of movement as well. However, you're not going to get it too far back just because of the excessive armor. His waist joint is universal. You get a whole bunch of movement out of it. In fact, there's a little double hinge on his chest armor to allow it to go forward a slight bit more. Honestly, it doesn't do all that much, but it's the thought that counts. The legs are type 2 hip joints, so they go forward and back, in and out to a satisfying degree. The Muso Saber could get in the way slightly, but the belt is malleable enough to let it pass. The knees bend quite a bit and even expose a little bit more detail beneath. The ankles are on a decent degree there, as far as tilt is concerned, and you have a toe joint. Overall, he's got some really solid articulation. He does most things you'd expect him to, and Figuarts has escaped the realm of fiddliness that existed with the Wizard releases. They've returned to desk toy material, as far as I'm concerned. For accessories, he comes packed with a pair of standard fists, a pair of splayed open hands that can also double for holding lock seeds, a pair of hands for holding the Daidai Maru, a pair of hands for holding the Muso Saber, and a pair of hands for holding the Muso Saber as a gun with an outstretched trigger finger. The Daidai Maru itself is done really well with a similar finish to the armor. It also has an additional piece of translucent plastic over the top for a really cool effect. It's a very well done weapon. Now the Muso Saber is holstered to his waist. The holster itself can pop off, but there's also a sliding mechanism here. A lot of people have some issues with this being glued together improperly. I don't have that case, so I don't know what the deal is there. This can just plug back onto the belt. The Muso Saber is done similarly well. It's got some really nice tampo details, just like the belt. And it looks pretty cool overall. Like I said, you can hold this as a normal sword, or you can swap out a hand that has the trigger finger exposed and hold it like a gun. If I can actually get this hand on. There we go. Slot this in here, just like that. So we can take a couple shots at Invest Fools. Now, the lock seed on his belt can actually be removed, and like I said earlier, it's made out of a malleable plastic, so there's not a whole lot of worry of breakage. It's painted on the opposite side, and looks pretty good overall. This just plugs onto the Muso Saber so we can do some powered up attacks. Now he does come with a closed version of the lock seed, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but it's got some really nice printed details. It even says LS01 on there if you squint hard enough. This can store on his belt on the side here, but can't actually plug into the driver because the lock itself is not open. Like I said, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for him to come with this, but the functionality is there for other figures. At least you get an orange lock seed that you can display with something like Baron or Ryugen. Last but not least, his two weapons can actually combine into the Naginata mode. So let me just switch out a hand on his opposite arm and get that going. There's a peg on the bottom of the hilt here, and a hole on the bottom of the hilt there. They go together just like that, and it makes for a very cool effect. This guy also came with a first run bonus in the form of this display base. It's quite a bit bigger than your standard Tamashii stage, more than twice the size. It doesn't have any peg holes for the Tamashii stage arms, so it's basically just something for your figures to stand on top of. This is a lot more impressive when paired with the first run bonus that came with Baron, this foldable screen. For someone like me, who is only planning on getting Gaim, I'm not gonna get much use out of this. It looks pretty cool with the logos of Gaim, Baron, Ryugen, and Zangetsu, but overall, alone, just isn't all that great. S.H.Figuarts is a line riddled with subpar base form riders of recent years just because they try rushing them out as the series is still running. The biggest offenders of this being Wizard, O's, and Decade. But this guy gives me high hopes. It is an incredible figure. If you're not a fan of Gaim, then you probably haven't seen far enough into it yet, because it is an awesome series. And if you're looking for a figure from it, this is the one to get. It's got some solid articulation, stunning details. It'll look great on your shelf compared to just about anything, and has enough play value to keep you messing with it on your desk for weeks. Anyway, that is about it, guys, and this is IX Roll at IX, signing off.